Hi, Jonathan. We're back,
Yes, great to be here.
and we're back now with our sixth topic, and this one is going to be entitled Evangelistic Disciplemaking. Now,
They've been hearing that term a lot.
they've been hearing it a lot, and now they're saying, okay, now why in the world are they telling us this? Because they've been telling us about this the whole time. Well, you're going to find out.
That's right.
And what we're attempting to do here is the whole training set of videos that we're producing. This is a joint effort between Uttermost Sports and CSRM, and we've been working on this because we have been under siege, if you will, in the sports ministry movement for the local church. Reached a high level watermark really in the early 2000s. But we've seen in the last 10 years, and even more dramatically in the last 5 years, that there's been a number of churches that have begun to walk away from doing sports ministry because they didn't see that it was actually fulfilling the mission of the church. And when economics get tight, people begin to want things to be effective and efficient. Imagine that. And so the reason that this terminology, evangelistic disciple making, is so important to us is that we believe that part of the reason why it has not gone well and it has not fulfilled the promises is because we focused on maybe one or the other, evangelism or discipleship, and we need to keep it all in balance, and we need to really understand what the true mission of the church is. I think that's what you're going to help us with today.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Greg, I have to say this is one of the sessions that excites me the most when I have the opportunity to give this training, because this is something that comes out of my own experience as much out of the need that you're talking about. Because I've been involved in sports ministry for more than 20 years on many different levels in many different countries.
How many continents?
Oh, all but Antarctica, I think. More than 70 countries. And yet, these truths that we're going to share with you today, I found it speaks all across the world, no matter language, culture, wherever you are a believer, wherever you're playing sports or trying to do sports ministry. These principles will be things, I think, that you can really hang your hat on and say, okay, this is what we're about. So
I've only been on 4 continents, but I'm right with you. So
yeah.
I think this is vital.
Let's go for it. Okay, so here we are. This is Dr. Greg Linville and Jonathan Detweiler, and yeah, these are the ways you can reach us through our websites. But as we talk about the mission of the church, I've discovered that many churches, they don't really know, or they don't even have a mission statement. And I wonder, the church you're a part of, do you know what the mission statement is for the church where you're going?
And as we talked in an earlier topic, we really help people understand the difference between vision and mission,
right?
And that they're not the same. So go back to those tapes, look at that.
Yeah.
Those videos.
The mission really is, how am I going to now live out my vision?
That's right.
And succeed that, or be successful in that. And so I remember I lived in Mississippi for about 6 years, and the church I was a part of, Dr. Artis Fletcher, he would have the whole congregation stand up at least once a month and recite our mission statement. We exist for the purpose of reaching God, making disciples, and reaching the whole world globally, nationally, and worldwide. And so, but as I've gone around the world and as I've met with church leaders and pastors and church members, most of the time they don't even know what the mission of their church is. And so that's where we have to start. And as we've also been saying, the mission of the church is not a building, but it's each one of us individually who God has called, who has a personal relationship with Him, and now He's saying, hey, I want you to be my witness to the world. And so these are also things that speak to the larger body of the church, but as we are the body of the church, ultimately speaking to us. So where do we begin? Well, I think the first thing that our mission is about is to reach upward in worship. And what I have people do is I have people demonstrate it by, come on, reach upward. Where am I there? So you lift your hands up and that's how you remember it. And where does this come from? Well, in Romans chapter 12, we are called to make our bodies a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And then it says, this is your spiritual act of worship. So a lot of times we say we go to church on a Sunday morning and we have worship and then we have preaching. Well, okay, that is a part of worship, but the ultimate definition of worship is to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, to give everything that I have, everything that I am. And if I only give God that 1 hour or 2 hours on a Sunday, or 4 hours if you're in Africa or some other continent where you attend, that's not very much. But a living sacrifice means that you're willing to give your life, everything about your life, every moment of every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what's interesting about these verses in Romans, it says, and once you do this, then you will know God's will, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So as we worship God, as we give Him everything, then we also discover what His will is for our life.
And before people jump to a conclusion here, we are definitely in agreement theologically that we can worship with a guitar or an organ and also with a basketball.
Well, and that's exactly the point. And one of the great examples, I think, is Eric Liddell, the Olympic athlete. He had a great phrase that I love to quote, and he said, when I run fast, I feel God's pleasure. Because he was doing that, I believe, as a form of worship to God, saying that...
And do you know what the second part of that was? It's often forgotten. Very crucial.
Yeah.
And not to run would be to hold God in contempt.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And although he never actually said that, that's what he said in the movie. I've actually done the research with his family and other members. I don't know that he ever strung those words quite together, but that was exactly what he believed as you look at what he wrote. Very much that athletes are given an opportunity to worship through their athletics. But it doesn't replace a Lord's Day worship,
right.
Nor does the Lord's Day worship replace what an athlete's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But so, upward in worship, go for it.
Right, okay. So then the second part of this now, okay, so we reach upward in worship. The next part is we reach inward in love and edification. And, when you look at the definition of love, in English, the English language lets us down because we have one word for love, but in Greek they had 4, some people
Give me
say
a word,
5,
any word.
right? So when I say I love pizza and I love my wife, does that mean I love pizza the way I love my wife? Well,
sometimes my wife thinks so, but
if that happens, then you're going to be on the couch.
Yeah.
So
I bought a nice couch, by the way.
There you go. Well, okay. But anyway, so we're created to love others, and you can look up the verses there, but the one I want to bring your attention to is 1 John 4:7, where I think we're given a definition of love that defines love by which all other love can be defined, and that is, it says that Jesus is the one who God sent out of His love for us. And the definition, the true definition of love is what Jesus then did by giving His life. And so if I love something, that means I'm willing to give my life for it. Now, if you're watching this video, that doesn't mean that you haven't loved anything enough because you haven't given your life yet. Because Greg and I are still here, and yeah, we've demonstrated hopefully a lot of love to the people around us and through our sports ministry. But I think what the principle is getting at is that we have to be willing to give up our own lives, our own desires, back to that living sacrifice, to demonstrate a love for God and show that He is the most important thing in our life. And so how do you do that in sports and sports ministry? Well, in a world that's corrupt with competition, there's lots of opportunities to show love. It doesn't mean that you're not wanting to win, but it means that you go in with an attitude that out of respect for your coach, for the referees, for your opponent, and you're able to demonstrate to them through your play and through your actions that that you're not putting them down, that you're in a way that you play and how you live, that you're demonstrating Christ. And when I was younger, I was not a professional athlete, but I loved to play sports. And I remember being picked after school. Everybody would go to the playground and play. And who got picked first? Always the people who could play the most. And I was always one of the last picked. And so I remember finally when I got old enough and I was the first picked, I thought, okay, I'm going to throw off this other guy in his game. So I started picking the weaker players first. And then he got a little bit concerned, and so he felt a little subconscious, so he started doing the same thing. And in that way, it was a fun game. Of course we wanted to win, but I wanted to demonstrate love to my friends in a way that demonstrated something different than just what normally we see in sports. So inward in love, and then we say outward in evangelistic discipleship. And we know that the Great Commission is to go and make disciples, and not converts, but to make disciples. And through sports, you have a great opportunity to build bridges into the community and then be able to share God's love. So if you talk about the mission of the church, the mission of me, of you, Greg, of you watching and what God has called us to, then it's to reach upward in worship, to reach inward in love, to build others up, and to reach outward in evangelistic discipleship. And as you stay true to that, then you begin to move towards what I think God fully intends for your sports ministry. So, here is basically what it really is all about, the Great Commission. And this is what we want to pursue, to make disciples and then teach them to obey. And then, of course, our word is to create reproducing reproducers. So then, here we have often the conflict between project thinking and movement thinking. And as it relates to the vision, we see project thinking is, I've got to go and I've got to do a sports project and I've just got to, see how many people I can get. And I want to attract as many people as I can, as opposed to a movement which says I'm going to build relationships with people and I'm going to allow them to come and be a part of what I'm doing, with the thinking that I'm going to see them again and I'm going to be able to try to build into their life. And so that's really what we're also talking about in 2 Timothy 2:2. If you missed the other sessions, you need to go back and see this, because this is what we're focusing on, where Paul is saying to Timothy, and these things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, and trust to reliable men who are then qualified to teach others. And that's the movement thinking that we're talking about, which is evangelistic discipleship. So we have to get out of our mind that we're doing events and we're doing activities, but we're looking for ways to engage. And so then, as I was involved in sports ministry, I was working for about a year, and my mission was the Great Commission, but I woke up one day and realized there were no leaders around me. And I thought, okay, Jonathan, you've wasted your time. But then God brought me back to this model, which we were using in youth ministry, and I thought, okay, if I can incorporate this, then it will help me to move forward. So here's how the model works, and we're just going to go through this quickly because we're going to tackle it again in a bit. But we have the win level. The win level is where you have friendship, fellowship, and you really just make contact with people, and you want as many people as possible to be there. But what you're doing is you're looking for these persons of peace.
That we talked about previously.
Right,
go back to other videos.
That God is working on already. But ultimately, it's evangelism. So you have a chance to share the gospel. Of course, you want to do that. But there are examples where you can do this through leagues, clinics, programs, literature distribution, tournaments, match showings, projects. But then the desire is you cannot stay there, because if you stay there, then you're never going to get to the top level. And that's what I discovered. I was trying to get to the top level without the build level. So the build level here is where you have discipleship, follow-up. You take the persons of peace through a discovery process. And these are some examples you can use. Sports Alpha, teams, discovery Bible studies, community clinics, leadership programs, and projects. Because the desire is, as you work through the pyramid, that you want to get to the send level, where you're creating reproducing reproducers with multiplication, leadership, and you are basically equipping permission giver. You're giving them permission now to fulfill the calling that God has placed on their life. And these are some examples. Through outreaches, ministries, various leadership programs, and new groups, you put people in positions of leadership so they can grow. So this is the model that works together with your church mission. It really accomplishes what you're all about, the Great Commission, reaching people. It's a biblically based ministry model, and it's key to being successful. And then it allows you to start a movement of evangelistic discipleship. And what happened for me is I discovered that all my activities were at the first level, the win level. And God shook me up, and I realized I needed to start building and multiplying. And so here's what we say, intentionality. And this is a quote from John Perkins. Just to wrap up, he says, we need leaders with the faith that sees the depth of our need, yet persists in believing in the power of the gospel. Leaders with a hope which can see the future and move others towards it. Leaders with a love that will sacrifice self in order to serve others. If we are to have this kind of leader, we dare not leave leadership development to chance. We must make the discipling of new leaders the very center of our missionary strategy. John Perkins was an African-American man who started working in Mississippi and realized he needed to change and develop leaders, and
he really did.
He did, and that's what he talks about: being intentional in leadership development. And so, okay, what's your homework? I want you to think through this Win, Build, Send model, which actually I incorporated during my days with Athletes in Action and Campus Crusade. So the verbiage comes from them. The model comes from what I learned when I was in youth ministry, and I applied it to sports ministry, and it changed and revolutionized my sports ministry. And so if you use it as a guide, you can ask yourself, how can you build this win, build, send, multiply model into your ministry in the events, activities that you're already doing, or now that you are just starting out. So if you keep that in mind, though, it'll keep you on target, and you'll really be able to be successful, and it'll save you years of frustration.
And as you said, we've just barely gotten into it. And we put up here the CSRM YouTube channel that you can go to get all of the previous videos, and also the ones that are going to come up, where we're going to go through this win, build, send in detail. But for today, we've got the concept, we've got the foundation, and now we're going to move on from there in the next sessions. So, Jonathan, I appreciate what you're doing for us, and thanking you for that. Thanks to Uttermost Sports for the partnership here.
Yeah, and thanks for watching with us too.
And we're going to get going on this.
Join us.